all centered on one person, which I think is so interesting. We're going to build a whole world, a whole history around the life of one woman, Marlene Smith.
Exactly. Our whole mission here is to synthesize these different views, looking back, looking forward, and looking at her immediate life to tell the story of her family's journey through time and, just as importantly, across the map.
And Marlene herself, she's our anchor point. Let's get her details on the table. She was born July 1st, 1938, in Bridlington, Yorkshire, England.
And she just passed away recently on July 7th, 2023, in Nottingham, Nottinghamshire. Lived to be 85, a really full life.
And that's the first clue right there, isn't it? Born in coastal Yorkshire, died in the East Midlands. A small move, but one that defines her entire adult life.
It really does. It's the first big pivot in the story.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting right there, with her immediate adult life and how her own family really took root in Nottingham.
So the records show her life path changes pretty quickly after leaving Yorkshire. In July of 1960, she marries Ronald Frederick Ross, and that marriage is in Nottingham.
And he's also from Yorkshire originally.
He is, yeah. Born in Leeds, also in 1938, so they were the same age. But like Marlene, his life became centered in Nottingham. He passed away there in 2018.
So two young people from Yorkshire find each other and build a life in a new city. That really feels like a classic post-war story, you know?
It is. Moving to these regional hubs like Nottingham for work, for housing, it was a huge trend. And they cement that. You can see it immediately in the next generation.
With children.
Right. In just the next 8 years, the records show 5 children, all born right there in Nottinghamshire.
Okay, so from 1961 to 68.
Exactly. We have J.A. Rossi in 61, Kim L. Ross in 62, and T.N. Ross in 64, then Kevin N. Caldwell Ross in 67, and finally Neil Keith Ross in 1968.
Whoa, hang on. The names there, they tell the story all by themselves, don't they? We've got Rossi, then Ross, and then this really specific one, Caldwell Ross.
Yes, and this is where having precise records is just invaluable. It's not just a list of kids, it's a narrative.
So what's the story behind Kevin?
Well, the register document is very, very clear. The first 4 children you mentioned, Jay, Kim, Anne, and Neil, are listed as children of Marlene and her husband Ronald.
Okay.
But Kevin N. Caldwell Ross, is explicitly noted as the child of Marlene Smith and an unknown partner.
Wow. So that's not a typo. That's a deliberate, recorded fact about her life around 1967.
It's a huge detail. It marks this period of complexity or transition right in the middle of her child-rearing years. And that name, Caldwell, becomes a massive clue.
What do you think it signifies? Is Caldwell the name of the unknown partner?
It's a strong possibility. It's often an attempt to, incorporate the biological father's surname into the record, especially if he wasn't going to be formally named.
Or it could be a family name from her side, maybe.
That's the other theory. A maternal family name brought forward to give him a distinct identity. Either way, its inclusion is intentional. It tells us something important happened.
It definitely anchors his story as unique. But still, the geography remains consistent. The births, the marriage, the deaths of Marlene and Ronald. It's all Nottingham.
All Nottingham. Yorkshire gave her a start, but Nottingham is where she built her own chapter, her own foundation.
All right, so with Marlene's life firmly established in Nottingham, let's look backwards. Let's trace those roots. Her parents were George Smith and Constance May Hughes.
And right away, with her father, George, we're back in Yorkshire. He was born in Bridlington in 1909. That's the coastal link right there.
And if we follow that Smith line back, does it stay in Yorkshire?
Oh, it is pure Yorkshire. It's an incredible example of what we call regional anchoring. Her paternal grandparents, James William Smith and Lily Lawson, were born in the 1870s in Driffield and Bridlington Key.
These are tiny little places, really.
Very connected to the lands, to the agricultural heart of the East Riding, and it just keeps going.
Her great-grandparents.
Same story. James Alfred Smith, born in Driffield around 1848. Mary Ann Grayson, born in Kirkby Moorside. For 4 generations, the Smith side of the family lived, worked, and died in, probably a 30-mile radius.
Their whole world was defined by that little corner of England.
Absolutely. And that kind of stability tells you a lot about 19th century life. You didn't move unless you had a very good reason. Your opportunities were right where you were.
Okay, so that's the Smith line. Deeply, deeply Yorkshire. What about her mother's side, the Hughes line?
Well, this is where the story gets a bit more complicated. Her mother, Constance May Hughes, was also born in Yorkshire in a place called Ulrome.
And her maternal grandmother brings in another key name, right? The Noddletree document.
Yes, Ethel Noddle. The Noddle family is just like the Smiths. They are the definition of deep roots. Ethel, her mother Amelia. They were all from a town called Killam in Yorkshire. Born there, lived there, died there. The definition of local.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because you said the story gets complicated. The Noddles sound just as rooted as the Smiths.
They are. The twist comes from Marlene's grandfather on that side, Henry Milner Hughes.
Okay.
He was born in 1884, but he wasn't born in Yorkshire at all. He was born much further south, in a place called Mayol Brace, Shropshire.
Shropshire? Wait a minute. That's a huge jump. That's on the border with Wales.
It's a massive geographical discontinuity. It just leaps out at you from the Anentefeld chart. For a family that seems so completely tied to the Northeast, suddenly you have this origin point in the West Midlands.
So his parents must have been from Shropshire, too.
They were. Thomas Milner Hughes and Elizabeth Wilkes. Born and based in towns like Mayol Brace and Shrewsbury. That's the Shropshire route.
So we have a migration story then, buried right in her ancestry. Someone, probably Henry's parents or Andy himself, made the decision to move from Shropshire all the way up to Yorkshire.
And you have to imagine what a journey that was around the turn of the century. That's not a weekend trip. That is a major life-changing resettlement, probably for work.
What kind of work? What would drive that?
Well, you have to think about the wider economy then. The late 1800s saw huge movements of people within Britain. People leaving agricultural areas like Shropshire for the booming industrial and coastal towns in places like Yorkshire and Durham.
So the Hughes family were economic migrants,
Yeah.
but within their own country.
That's almost certainly the story. They left their established home, brought their Shropshire heritage north, and then, met and married into these deeply, deeply entrenched Yorkshire families like the Noddles.
What an amazing picture that paints. Marlene's heritage is this incredible mix. You've got the Smiths and the Noddles, who are practically part of the Yorkshire soil.
Immovable.
And then you have the Hughes line, representing this great internal migration, bringing in this completely different strand of DNA just a generation before she was born.
And that dynamic, that blend of stability and movement, is what makes her family story so unique.
Okay, so we've traced the roots back, we've seen the Yorkshire stability and the Shropshire surprise. And we've seen Marlene anchor her own life in Nottingham. So what happens next? Let's look at the legacy, the descendancy.
Right, and what you see at first is that the stability Marlene and Ronald created really holds. It carries straight into the next generation. The descendancy documents list 11 grandchildren.
And where are they born?
Overwhelmingly, they continue that regional concentration. They were all born in the Nottinghamshire or, nearby Mansfield area.
So the family base in Nottingham held strong for another generation.
Absolutely. You see names like Alessio Ernesto Rossi, born in 99, Samantha Ann Hopkinson in 1989, Melissa Carey Ross, also in 99. The 1990s were clearly a baby boom for the third generation.
And they're all local. The family's just spreading across the Nottingham suburbs, the East Midlands.
They really are. You can just feel how Marlene and Ronald laid down those roots. And for decades, the family stayed close to that community they chose.
And there's a lovely personal detail in there, too, by other names.
There is, and I love finding these. It shows that these aren't just records, they're about people and sentiment. One granddaughter is named Haley Marlene Chitty.
She carries Marlene's name.
She carries her grandmother's name. It's such a clear connection, a way of preserving that personal link across the generations.
That's beautiful. So the grandchildren keep the story local, but you get the feeling a big change is coming.
A huge change. This is where the story pivots again, but this time it's not a move from one English county to another. It's global.
This is the great-grandchildren.
Exactly. We have 7 great-grandchildren listed. Now, most of them continue the story. We have Chloe, Jack, Tay, Georgie Caldwell, Eliza, and Harry Williams, all in the Nottinghamshire Mansfield area. Classic examples of kids staying close to the family hub.
But not all of them.
Not all of them. Here's the inflection point. The single detail in the descendancy document that changes everything.
Okay.
Haley Marlene Chitty, the granddaughter who carries Marlene's name, she married a man named Eric Wormsbaker in 2016. And that marriage didn't happen in Nottingham. It happened in Newburgh, Warwick, Indiana, USA.
Indiana. Wow. That's the big jump.
That is the beginning of the family's international chapter. Their child, Grayson Wormsbaker, born in 2020, is the first person in this entire detailed family history whose birth is recorded outside of England.
The contrast is just staggering, isn't it?
Yeah.
We were just talking about how monumental the move from Shrewsbury to Bridlington must have been in the 1890s.
A life-altering migration.
And now the jump from Nottingham to Indiana.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of a completely different world, a world of easy travel, of global communication.
It is, and what's so fascinating is how these records capture that exact moment the family story goes global. For hundreds of years, the story was defined by the landscape of northern England.
Regional anchoring.
Exactly. And now that deep localized history has branched onto a new continent. It proves that even the most stable family tree can be transformed by, modern love and globalization.
It really positions Marlene's life as this incredible bridge. She lived from the old world, the localized world, into the new one.
She really did. Her life is the pivot point between centuries of English history and the beginning of an American one.
So this deep dive has given us such a clear focus map. We started with Marlene as the anchor in Nottingham.
Then we looked back and found those deep, deep roots in Yorkshire and that really surprising migration from Shropshire in the 19th century.
And then we looked forward, and we saw the stability she created continue for a generation, only to see the next generation take this huge leap across the Atlantic.
It really illustrates two different realities, doesn't it? The power of generational stability that Marlene and Ronald built, and then the incredible speed of modern movement.
So what does this all mean?
I think it means that family history, geographical history, often moves at a crawl. It moves at the pace of that 1880s journey from Shropshire to Yorkshire. But the modern human story, it can change in an instant.
A single marriage, a single flight.
Exactly. The family that was established in Nottingham is now just as firmly established in Indiana. It really makes you wonder, what's next?
What's the final thought for our listeners to take away?
Well, just consider this. What unexpected job or relationship or even just a random choice might shift the trajectory of that new Wormsacker line in the next 100 years? This deeply English family story is now an American one. Where will it be in another century? What other continents might it spread to? The story is just beginning again.